Thank you, Captain SB Tyagi, for conceptualizing leadership series, which reminds me of from my army days, those Tuesday knowledge sharing sessions in OSR, Officers Study Room. I think many would be able to correlate my feeling. So, in the VUCA world, what we are living and experiencing today, the ingredients like the topic which we have chosen today, resilience and change management, are indispensable to leadership. This we all are experiencing and have felt it at every level. 2 days back, I was reading a quote from a CEO of world's largest food and beverage company who expressed his feelings of dealing the current COVID situation by stating that in crisis, you run a family, not a company. What a beautiful thought. And at the same time, it struck my head that it is not only very comforting for the people who are working under his able leadership, but at the same time, it reflects the leadership readiness, resilience, and ability to manage change to face the crisis. Change management, what a paradox. The topic is itself, change management. So it's very intriguing topic to discuss at this intellectual platform, and I'm really looking at new learnings today. I'm excited to introduce you all with my speakers of this evening who will tingle your gray matter to understand why these two qualities, resilience and change management, are inevitable for a good leadership. Without a much ado, I welcome Ms. Amri Saxena. She is the founder and director of Charismite, which provides HR, soft skills, and mental wellness training to the maritime professionals. She is a consultant with some of the premier institutes of maritime training, such as TS Chanakya, MERI, previously known as DMAT, MASA, and FOSMA for the past 8 years. She also conducts HR and mental wellness sessions for the corporates and management. She has worked with All India Radio as a radio jockey for the FM channel for 10 years. A very warm welcome, Amri.
Thank you, Himani. Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be back here on this platform again.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see everybody.
Our second speaker is Ms. Harmeet Anand. She is an executive and leadership coach. She is a professional certified coach with ICF. She founded Coach for Max in 2013 in Singapore to support leaders from profit and not-for-profit organizations. Lived in Singapore and Indonesia, she has facilitated the growth of leaders across many cultures. Before starting as a coach, she was in the corporate sector in management and leadership roles. She has also worked with very famous brands, GlaxoSmithKline, Bazi.com, eBay India, Mudra Hindustan Times. In the capacity of a coach, facilitator, she has coached hundreds of executives. She is also yoga instructor, Reiki, and shamanic healing practitioner. A very warm welcome, Harmeet.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Himani, for that beautiful welcome. And I'm really looking forward to today's session.
Yeah, good. Good to see you both. So, without taking much time, I'm sure all our audiences want to hear you a lot. So, would start from you, Harmeet, since you've been in leadership roles with many reputed and, in fact, dream companies for many people, I would say. So, now you are curating executives and leaders. So, request share your thoughts on the importance of resilience in leadership and executive roles. How do you think one can build the same, or if one can build or not? Those points would like to hear from you.
Sure. Thanks, Himani. So, as we know, resilience is often spoken about bouncing back or coming to your normal self when you are facing something tough, right? And resilience, as we know, it is like a make or break characteristic for any leader or any organization to have. And in the context that we are in the pandemic situation that we are in, we are finding that this probably is the toughest of times that our collective consciousness has ever faced. And there are concerns, when we talk about health, we talk about our financial loss possible, and generally life has been disrupted. So a study which was done very recently by Gallup showed in April compared to May how much thriving which we used to feel. It was done actually in US, but organizations had a certain percentage of people who felt they were thriving, who felt they were struggling, and then who felt they were suffering. So the number of thrivers have gone down to the level of the Great Depression era. Okay, so that's what has happened in the pandemic that we are in. But thriving and resilience both go hand in hand, and only thriving and resilient cultures actually endure good and bad times, right? So, resilient, what are resilient organizations? These are organizations that are really committed to identifying and developing the best managers. These are managers who are really looking at what are the basics of connecting with people and understanding, first of all, clarifying with them what are their roles, how can they best support them in their roles, what kind of, how can they bring them together to the shared purpose that they are working towards. And this really needs a very high quality of non-command based leadership, but more coach like leadership, right? So I think the whole culture of resilience is, first of all, a great context for people to have at times when there is a lot of stress. And that's how resilience is built. And about building resilience amongst particular people like leaders and executives, sometimes debilitating things happen. People either lose their jobs or they might fail in a relationship, and the idea of resilience really means that they are able to bounce back, come back to their original self much stronger. And how do I help? Well, ask you, to answer that question, I think, let me step back and say, what are the challenges I face, and where do I open up the conversations that I open up with these executives? The biggest challenge I face, Himani, is that our corporate world doesn't really, in fact, world in general, I'd say, doesn't really believe in talking too much about emotions. We are hired for our smarts, we are hired for our certifications, we are hired for our experience, we are hired for our mental capacity to solve things, right? But there are, when it comes to tough problems that we face, we do want to have discussions which are around emotions, which I'm sure some of us are having those discussions with our families and friends. So we fail to actually recognize that we are humans, not just because of our mind, but we also have a body, and we also have emotions, and we also have the mind stuff which we can relate to through the language and the communication or the conversations we have. So as a coach, how I help is I try and open up an executive to at least have conversations which are around the emotionals or the mood spaces they are in. And it's often very hard for people to do that with people who they are in their team, because as leaders we're supposed to be a certain way. We are supposed to not be looking as if we are trying to cope. We have to be perceived in a certain way. So to be able to have a partner with whom you can have those conversations which bring you a little close to yourself and your authenticity is how I help corporate executives, leaders, or even other people to build their resilience, just to come back to where we are. And I just, I noticed, Himani, that when I was searching LinkedIn, and today's topic also, we are talking about resilience. So it's a word that has come up. We are still not ready to talk about emotions. In LinkedIn, we fail to talk about emotions. We basically are just talking about resilience. Resilience is a word that's coming from from the face of metallurgy. So that's how we feel when we are talking about emotions in the corporate world. We don't want to even go near it, and there's a stigma attached to it. So I guess working with a coach allows people to get a little closer to the feelings that they are not willing to see, and the questions they're not asking. And why that's important is because emotions are actually precursors to action. They are the predisposition to a kind of an action. Think about it. If you're feeling a certain way, if you're feeling resentment, you will have a different possibility of actions that you can take, versus if you're feeling ambitious or if you're feeling calm, we all tend to take different actions. So essentially, working on emotions is really important. And when we open that kind of dialogue, a different kind of actions also emerge when we are connecting with leaders.
Fantastic, Harmeet. In fact, when you were speaking, few things were getting into my mind. One of my commanding officer once had told me that, Himani, whenever we, go up in the hierarchy is a pyramid, and there, you are alone. So even if you want to even you want to just say a joke, but since you are in a position where you cannot, so you are right, we are bounded by certain perceptions, our, because leaders are is not about leadership, it's about followers. So at times we perceive into it so much that we are so stunned that we cannot even say a joke there. So you're absolutely right that emotional question gets missing out here, and in corporate it's all the more when I compare the two. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Harmeet, so much. So, Amri, coming on to you, what do you think how the leadership traits, resilience, and change management are relevant in the today's VUCA world? What makes people resilient in times of adversity? Amri can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So, like Harmeet very rightly pointed out that in the corporate world we somehow we are so striving for excellence, and we forget the emotional quotient in the process. So I would just quote Charles Darwin, and it was a very interesting quote I once came across. In it, he said that it is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change are the ones who have survived. So this is how the nature works. So now change, like if I don't want to sound cliched, but change is the constant, and it is something that keeps happening around us all the time, and sometimes it becomes a status quo. And like in this case, like, the change that suddenly happened, lockdown was announced, and we just had 4 hours to figure out what is to be done, and it actually completely caught us off guard. So similarly, in organizations also, when a change is, normally they want to implement a change, so they get too much into the technicals. Like they would hire, consultants on change practitioners who would come and who would develop a management strategy where the change will be brought about, and they would, design change models. They would design change education programs, training programs, that how the change is to be implemented. So in this case, their main idea is to minimize resistance, that people are comfortable and they are able to adopt it, they are able to accept the change.
Our speakers actually spoke about bouncing back. So I think we all know best version of ours comes out in adversity only. And one more beautiful thought which I picked up from Amri was that yes, if a leader can show that failiures are mine, success is yours to the team, so it gives a sort of a comfort to the team that fine, there is adverse situation but still we can go ahead with it. So beautifully covered by both of you. And now again, Harmeet, coming on to you, since you are a shamanic healing practitioner, it's quite intriguing for me. And I'm sure many audiences would like to know what the psychology behind the quality of resilience is. So, can you help us to understand that?
Sure. I think I'd like to give a little long answer to that very short question by actually explaining a little bit in terms of, the change that we as humans have always experienced, will continue to experience as we go forward. So if you think of, the three waves of change that we all know of, which is tens of thousands of years, we humans moved from being hunters to settlers. Then the big wave happened in the 18th century when industrial revolution happened, and then another big wave happened in the 1950s when technological advancements happened. The speed of travel, the speed of technology, information happened. With every change that happens, every human being has to adapt to a completely different mindset. It doesn't mean that the other mindsets don't exist, they exist, but that constant change needs all of us to adapt really quickly. And then the next wave now is the artificial intelligence wave, and today we are seeing this pandemic that has happened, again another change. So the thing is that with so many changes, our brain and our mind and our physical being gets impacted. there's a book called The Saturated Self by Kenneth Gergen, and he calls it very beautifully. He says, with the change, what happens is, first of all, the kind of change that has happened in the humanity that we are, there is no template. We have no idea, no blueprint how to respond to a new situation. We have no control how to do. And thirdly, we have no time to do it because the changes are happening so rapidly. So given that situation, the coping mechanism needs to be really strong. And that coping mechanism is actually a biological coping mechanism. We are not far away from our body, right? So that coping mechanism actually lies in our physical self to be able to cope with that kind of change that we are dealing. Well, when change happens, we start actually feeling anxious. You might have seen or noticed or spoken about people who are also getting violent and angry with the changes that we are dealing. There's a tendency to then get depressed or crawl back, and you don't want to take any decisions. It almost feels like a battle, the battle fatigue that we talk about after a battle, where you have to deal with so much of change. And essentially, like I said, it impacts us biologically, right? We are human beings, we have a body also, we forget that. So I think this feeling of being tossed around in the oceans, like, as if we are some flotsam in the waves, is compounded with our judgment around whether we can show that we are just trying to cope. We tell ourselves that, what, I must not look like I'm coping. We tell ourselves that I have to be able to cope. How come I can't cope with all this? But the reality is that there is a lot happening, and there's a lot of coping that we are doing as a human, as our nervous system is getting impacted. So I think from connecting this shamanism and coaching and this body and emotions and language is something very, it's very intuitive to me, because we are living in the age of anxiety. You're all living in the age of anxiety, and anxiety doesn't look at your role, it doesn't look at your status. No matter who you are, you are living in the age of anxiety with that excess of information, with the excess of change that's coming. And often we need, we ask these questions in silence. We ask ourselves, actually, am I okay as an individual? Yeah, who am I? Am I committed to the right cause? But the thing is, we don't even know that we are asking these questions sometimes. They're just playing in a background, like a background lyrics. We never articulate this, but there is something in our mind that's running as a background, saying, am I being okay as an individual? Am I really coping up really well? And I like to quote a little thing from a book called The Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. The author's name is very big, so I will not try and articulate it. It's a tongue twister. But he says that, inner order, which is the physical, mental, emotional order, is necessary to engage with the outer disorderly world. So this sense of inner order is called an ontological security. I'm throwing big words because I'm an ontological coach. And this ontological security is like, in my being, how do I feel? In my whole self, how do I feel? And the being encompasses the body, emotions, language, and all of that. So this ontological security is so important in our being, to be able to handle no matter what the circumstances are, to roll with the punches, and then still come out feeling like we did fine. I did fine. So this belief that no matter what comes my way, I will be able to cope up with it. No matter what comes my way, we will be able to do it. It's not arrogance. It's just a belief that I will be able to do it. And I think that is something that kind of intertwines and talks to the psychology, as you said, of resilience. Fundamentally feeling secure in your being.
So engrossed, Hamid, I didn't even realize that you have finished the answer. It was really, really very, very intriguing, and I'm sure audiences must also be feeling the same. What I could really gather and would like to again share with all that. Yes, there was one picture, roaming around in the WhatsApp some time back, wherein people are pushing a cart and somebody is showing them a wheel and they are saying, please don't show us, we're busy doing it. So you're absolutely right. We are absolutely, onto that. We are so busy that we don't even want to look for a change. We think what we are doing, what am I right now? It's so fine. So we are in a world of anxiety. We don't have time for any learnings. And the power of subconscious mind, which you explained, and I'm sure Captain Tyagi will give us an opportunity to understand the term which you use, ontological security, which I have written also too, because I'll not be able to otherwise speak up. I'm sure that required another session altogether to understand. But it is beautiful, and it itself, when you were speaking, it was quite, healing. So very nice. It touches your subconscious mind. And I think in Indian mythology, we give a lot of importance to our subconscious mind. So, Harmeet, another very interestingly, since you covered this, being a millennial, I like everything which is instant. So, quickly, can you share some instant mantras for millennials and Generation Z? That what are the practical steps towards increasing resilience? How can we actually, adapt to it very quickly, and what we can do to adapt all these good things into us?
The three P's. Okay, that's the mantra that I came up with. The three P's, the P. So the first P is really the purpose. Okay, we can be only resilient to a certain extent. We can move towards certain goals to a certain extent, but given sometimes circumstances feel so hard, people lose jobs, people lose their health, things happen. If we are not clear with the purpose, why we are doing what we are doing, and basically asking ourselves question, and I've written this question for all of us to think of, is that if you had to be a cause of something in this world, what would that cause be? Okay, what would that cause be if you had to be a cause of something? And as leaders, we are, we have to be not at the effect of things, but we have to be the cause of things. Yeah, that's how we display our leadership. That's how we get followers, right? So if you could be a cause of something, what would that cause be? So getting connected to the purpose, it can be a whole, you can spend a whole life answering that question. The second P is, as I said, three P's. So the second P is passion. And so that question that you would ask on passion is, why do you care? What that cause? Why do you care about it? And then answer from the space of your heart. What matters to you, and why do you care about this cause? So understanding your passions is the second thing for building resilience. And third is actually the P of patience, or the power in patience. Yeah, perseverance. And I found a very beautiful passage, and I'm going to read from the what I've written about patience. This is from somebody called Nikki Barnes, and it says, "You never know you are minutes away from a breakthrough. You never know you are one project away from a promotion, or maybe 1 hour away from studying and acing your exam. That is why you keep trying. You fail, you stand up. Truth is, many people give up without giving themselves a chance. They stop because it wasn't happening fast enough, or how they thought it would work out. So, my beautiful friend, remember, all good things take time. Be patient." This is by Nikki Barnes. And I thought that was really nice. So, the three mantra is really PPP.
Very nice. So, purpose, passion, and power, perseverance, what you mentioned, perseverance. And I'm sure you are absolutely right, Harmeet, that many a times, it is the cause which drives you. You actually, if we ask for any Olympic winner, what is driving them? What is it which keeps them, moving? It's not, I think, a gold medal. It is something to hear, your national anthem when you're standing on the pedestal upright. So that's the cause which drives you. That's the cause which will make you, give you the passion and the power to achieve it. So very nicely covered. So coming on to you, Amri, same would like to know from you too that what. Are those key ingredients required to be developed to be more resilient and manage change more aptly? would be fantastic if you can, share some anecdotes on the same with all of us.
First thing is to accept the change, that yes, there is a change. Now, when I quoted Darwin, he said that the people who are most adaptable to the change are the survivors in any species. So it is the same for the human beings also. So the first thing is to adapt the change. Second thing is to that whenever there is a change, there are certain new things that come in the environment. So it makes it, it gives you an opportunity to learn. So if you view change the way you look at it, if you look at it as an opportunity to learn, you will be able to adapt it better. The third thing is to take charge. That yes, there is a change, but I will not be bowed down by it. I will try to, get the better of it. I will try to do something. And it's not necessary that whatever you do, you may succeed in that, but at least you would have to take an initiative in some direction. So that is what make taking charge means. Then define the purpose, like Harmeet just pointed out that purpose is very, very important. That yes, if there's a change, what purpose does it solve, and why we need this change. If I'm able to, if you remember last time when we were, we got connected to that webinar, and Ivani, you pointed out something very good, that when you motivate your employees, so when you the best thing about motivation is that when you show them the purpose, or when you tell them that this is why we are doing it, they are, gives them a very smart goal to do about it. So smart goals are like, which are specific, which can be measurable. So if you tell them the purpose, that yeah, this is the purpose, we are able to we are able to accept the change better. Then to create a balance, it is important to create a balance, that yes, I will have to, even though this has disturbed my status quo, but I will still, take it as it is, and I would still handle it. I will not react to it, but I would respond to it. There's a difference between reaction and response. When you react to situations, it's instantaneous, but when you respond to situations, it is well thought. The most important thing about building resilience in youth is to cultivate relationships. Now, all of us are in, like you pointed out, that we are millennials. We like to be connected. We have so many connections on all the social media platforms. We have connections on Facebook. We have connections on LinkedIn. But at the end of the day, how many of these connections really matter? If you really need them, how many of these people will stand by you? So those are the connections we are talking about. We are not talking about the connections on social media. When we look at a person on social media, he's always perfect. We don't post the problems that we are facing. So, during this lockdown, there are a lot of posts of people, cooking cuisines, and they are doing their personal hobbies, but nobody is posting pictures of them doing the housework, or them taking the stress, or them managing the home and the office, or there are so many other problems that we are facing during this time, but we are not putting it in the social media. We are just putting the good parts of our day-to-day lives. That is what is
The way in the Three Idiots, the Amir Khan said, all is well, and that actually works. That we all know at the time of distress, or maybe, if somebody, your close relative is in a hospital or something, and if somebody just comes and pat your shoulder and says that all will be fine, I think that heals us to an extent. And what you and Harmeet mentioned about purpose, I truly believe in that. I truly believe it, that whenever you join a person with the right purpose, you will have results. There's no way, you need not to look back, that what are the results, or anything you need to do. Only you have to connect the right person with the right purpose. So maybe it is very, very it works very well. And then the smart goals in the corporate, we all talk about the smart goals, which you also mentioned. Very nice. And importance of relationship, Amri, I really feel that yes, when I contrast my two careers from army and to corporate, I really feel it's slightly missing out here. Maybe we are in a lot of rush in corporate. So, but it is needed, but it is equally needed. It's not that army life you need it everywhere. So it is absolutely required. And many times, what I also learned from a childhood, which is now I think is not the right thing, that how are you is a compliment. It's not a question. So generally we always say that, yes, I'm fine, good. So we always treat it as a compliment. It's never, answered as a question. So
it
very
is the biggest lie That I said. That's what I said. It's the biggest lie we keep telling people. I'm fine.
I'm fine. I'm good.
And people
Yeah,
stop asking questions after that. The moment they say, you tell them you are fine, they
yeah.
take it as a given that yes, you are fine. You must be fine. If you're saying so, it is. It maybe it is.
Correct.
Maybe it is.
Correct. Correct. And coming on to you, Harmeet, why do you think that it is so important, to have resilience? And I would request you also that please share some examples from your vast experience being in the leadership roles yourself when you were working with such brands. That what are those good examples of change management which immediately comes to your mind as of now, if in case you want to share some? So, what are those immediate change management examples you would like to share here?
When you said when I worked in the corporate, so it's not from my own corporate experience, but some brand that's close to a lot of us. What came to my mind when you asked me, Himani, was what happened to our favorite brand, Cadbury's. There was a time when it came into negative PR because of the infestation issue. Remember? And it was like it's one of the favorite
Correct.
brands which comes under the landscape of, oh my God, this is going to go down. What really worked for them at that time, it's become a case study, is how the head, the CEO, the MD actually went ahead and spoke in public, apologized, and created that, won that confidence over just by being authentic about whatever has happened. So communication very openly actually helped. And I feel that has always been the key for any organization or leadership to basically bounce back in any adversity that may happen, because adversity is part of the game. We are born to learn through adversity. That's how, as humans, we've taken this journey to become higher order spiritual beings, right? And that can only happen with adversity. And if we know how to look at adversity as inspiration. So the other thing which comes, there are lot of examples that come to my mind. And for example, I was working with an executive and a couple of executives, in fact, in the same domain, where we all of us have a sense of like we are doing really well in our lives. Our role shows that, the promotion that we get shows it. We've got all the badges and we've earned all our badges. But there comes a time where we kind of wonder, is it just my perception, or do I need to actually ask people for feedback? And people don't normally give feedback in the corporate world. If you've noticed, it's very hard for juniors to give feedback to their seniors. So this particular executive was happy that he hired a coach to get feedback from people, and it was taken, anonymously, so people didn't have to give their name. So want to say something, but we shy away from conflicts. We are too wedded to actually pleasing. That's another roadblock. We discovered that he was such a people-centric person that he never wanted to hurt anyone. So it was basically building a competency as well as a capacity to give feedback to his team members, and to also follow through on the feedback that he had given. So if I say as a leader, I'm not going to, I'm not going to be actually, these are the expectations and I want you to live up to these expectations. And if you don't do that, there will be repercussions to it. But then if you don't follow through, that also reduces the trust, right? If you don't fire someone who's not performing, who's not productive, that also reduces that. So how being too people centric also reduces one's trust and moving towards a mastery of leadership. How being too task centric also does the same. People who are task centric may get very good feedback. Like I'm coaching someone, very good feedback. There is nothing to improve, but the collaboration is so poor. The team feels that I wish you wouldn't add so much of value in every meeting. I wish you would just let me be, and let me try my creativity and let me fail. So in every situation, we tend to adopt the leadership style. We become either too people centric or we become too task centric. The ability to combine the two essentially is, I have seen in my experience, where leaders have seen their growth And that happens when they are willing to, work for a community, for a cause, and they become aware of the system, and they are authentic. They are authentic to have courageous conversations. They are committed to creating mastery. And the third thing they're committed to is saying that, you know what, I am ready to declare myself as a beginner. It is so hard to declare yourself as a beginner. It's so hard to say, I don't know, can you help me here? I need help. For leaders, it's very hard. So leadership, to add on to what Amri was saying, leadership is all about relationships. And mastery of leadership begins when we declare ourselves a learner and say that, you know what, I don't know, I need help here. And learning can only happen if you become good listeners. So Amri's point of listening is so critical because it's the source of learning and it's the source of masterful leadership.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Armit, that yes, as leaders and as executives, when we are leading the team, it's not easy to say that I need help. I don't know this. I'm a beginner. Yes, I truly agree with you that it requires a lot of courage, to say that I'm a first timer or
have made a mistake, and if you're talking about it, you are actually helping the next generation to understand, because every mistake, everybody doesn't have to make all the mistakes to learn. Sometimes you learn from other people. Okay, he made a mistake, let me not do it. So if, like you said, that honestly, if you're honest about it, and it's a very endearing quality, when you're honest with people, if you just look around us, if you look around us, the people who have been very honest with their mistakes, or who have been very open about the fact that they have committed mistakes, are the people whom we look up as role models. So that is a very, very important aspect that Harmeet pointed out. Secondly, what I would say, that why we are not sharing, why we don't share, because sometimes people have this thing in mind that if I talk about my mistakes to my juniors, they might use it against me later on. If they come up with a mistake, and if I as a leader point it out to them, they might come back to me and say that you made the same mistake. You were talking about it in that particular meeting. So out of that fear, people are not sharing, or people are not talking about the mistakes, and that is sometimes it takes the learning doesn't happen the way it should. The second thing, like again, Harmeet pointed out, which was again a very good point, that feedback and appreciation. I'll give you a simple example, a very, very simple observation. You post a nice picture on Facebook, a lot of people will appreciate. Maybe in a day's time you will get 50, 60, 70 likes. But then you post a picture on LinkedIn, and suddenly the number of likes reduce. The reason is that when you're in the professional setup, people somehow they hold them. They don't appreciate openly. They don't say that, oh, you are doing a good job, and that comes from a place that comes from a very insecure place, because you feel threatened if somebody is doing better than you in the organization. The leader creates this environment where he is appreciating even small acts. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to hold that appreciation towards the end of the year, where you are giving an annual report or something. You can appreciate small acts. So when we appreciate small things, it creates an environment, it creates a setup where everybody is full of appreciation, full of gratitude, and that is what makes an organization more resilient, and it raises the happiness quotient of the organization.
Yeah.
So there was there's a course in Harvard, which is about it is a master's in happiness. So this master's in happiness, the first thing they teach, and it's a master's course, where a lot of people enroll for that course, and it is like one of the most sought after courses. And the first thing they teach you is that the people who are happiest are the people who are grateful about small things. So it's a very simple thing. It's a very cliched. I would say, everybody talks about appreciation, or what's big deal about it, but everybody talks about it, but they don't practice it. So we have to start practicing it. Every small thing matters. every little act of kindness, every little act of excellence, it should be appreciated, it should be celebrated. And then that will create an overall, it will increase the happiness automatically. This is
Beautifully covered. I'm just thinking because since both the speakers are so good and all the audiences have posed so many questions. So
my compliments to all three speakers, Himani, Harmeet, and Amri. You covered this subject so wonderfully. In fact, you have taken us back to our, younger days where these aspects of emotions and relationships really mattered, in the work that we did in our younger age. Now, my question to you is, you see, India is undergoing a multiple adverse events these days. Starting from COVID to Amphan to Nisarga to locust to earthquake to job losses and whatnot. People getting stuck in different places. But you don't find any inputs of people giving up. Unlike what we see in normal peaceful days, a lot of farmers committing suicide for loan. You don't find any such news. That is one positive aspect. So is it that resilience is something in the blood of the Indian culture? My question is for both of you. I mean, both of you will wonderfully attempt to it. I know.
okay, sir. Harmeet, may I?
Yeah, sure, Amri.
So resilience is bouncing back, but resilience doesn't mean being complacent. So we in India sometimes tend to get complacent. We get immune to the change. So that immunity should not be there. Resilience is about learning from incidents, or if there is a happening, or if there is an event, and if things are going wrong, what I can do, first you come out of that, and then what are the things I can do to make it better? How I mend my ways? So that is what resilience stands for. But sadly in our country, sometimes, not always, because ours is a country which has a wonderful spirit, and I live in a city, Mumbai is one city which is known for its spirit. It has gone through so much, but every time it bounces back, and within a day's time we get back to work in a way as if nothing happened. So we have handled a lot of things in the past. So like what I said, that resilience is about bouncing back, but at the same time not getting complacent. If we are getting complacent, then we are not growing. So that growth also has to be there. Yeah, over to you, Harmeet.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amri. And I think that's such a wonderful question, and it's opened my mind to thinking, yeah, that's true. We are coping up reasonably well. And what is the reason that we are coping really well? And the first thing that came to my mind was this pandemic situation was the first thing, and then all the other natural disasters have started happening since then. Or also the situation that's happening at the borders. The thing is that we have been called home to, in many ways. We've been actually literally, not metaphorically, being called home and be locked in our homes. For some of us, by the way, it's not easy. And there are a lot of cases of domestic violence also. So I'm not going over there, but overall pictures we are being called home to. And it's the time where a lot of people are also reflecting. And I'm assuming here, by the way, this is just my way of living. I don't know what's happening at the migrant level, people who've gone back to work. Maybe there is reflection there also in terms of what they gave up, living their land, living their families, and working for cities like us. So I feel that just the connection that we are getting, the time that we are getting to be with ourselves, and the time to reflect on what is the cause of our work, like why are we so committed to spending so much of time doing the things that we do, and does it really matter in the long run? It's really a time for reflection, and I think that so ties in with resilience. I feel that ties in with resilience because people are now really trying to connect back, ask deeper questions with themselves at some level. I know some clients and executives who are saying, what's my purpose? Why am I doing this? Why only profitability? How can I think of sustainability instead of profitability? And I think those are all questions that build on resilience.
I just want to chip in a quick point here, that I think maybe the fact that we all are in it together, that is also making a lot of difference. It's not that only I'm suffering. All of us are there together in this. So because if I have a story, even you have a story, and all of us are dealing with this situation together. That is giving us strength. And so, of course, there are negative incidents happening. There are suicide rates. Suicides are happening. But the fact that we are all in it together gives us a lot of strength to handle this whole situation.
From Umar Farooq is, as a leadership trait, one has to be prepared always for worst case scenario. In a way, standard operating procedures help us to be prepared for all eventualities. Don't you think that preparing for worst case scenario would suffice to take any eventuality that may crop up as part of resilience? So he is asking about preparing worst case scenario and having SOP for that. Anyone can answer this question.
Can I just answer very briefly here? Amri, is that okay?
Yes, please, Hamid.
Yeah, I think, yes, absolutely. Being prepared for the worst case scenario is always good to be prepared for things. So I think right now in the situation that we are in, and we need to think of doing two things. One is act now, acting now. What needs to happen right now to take care of whatever is happening, because it's all happening too quickly to know what are the repercussions. And as we act now, we also need to be equally think of plan for future, and that future can look for a worst case scenario, but often it kind of boxes us into thinking that there is no opportunity in this. So there is also an opportunity to in this. So the planning for later needs to include both worst case scenario and also the opportunities that could exist, especially as a leader, in organizations where we work, a lot of opportunities are also opening up looking at your industry. So I feel not just preparing for the worst case scenario, but also to prepare for the best opportunities that would happen. This is really a place where we could bounce back also.
Amri, you have to say anything further to what Harmeet has already said?
So Harmeet has put it very beautifully, like what she said. Yes, you can look at problems as an opportunities to okay, we have to think about a worst case, or we have to think about that what if everything goes wrong. But we cannot constantly think about it. We cannot, it's a very thin line we are walking upon. Where sometimes when we start thinking about it, we might tend to get negative also. So we don't have to get negative. We can also think about that. Okay, if this happens, what are the opportunities there for us? And that will help us to create. Problems are like the stepping stones to a better tomorrow. So if we look at problems like that, we will be able to handle it.
Yeah, thank you, Amri. Question from Captain Sanjay Saxena. Sanjay, are you willing to ask your question yourself, please?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My question to both the speakers is, since we are talking about the change management, are there any ready-made tools available which are given to the HR manager, the change manager, to bring about the changes? Yes.
It depends on the change that we want to bring about. And sometimes those changes are so drastic, so it is sometimes very difficult to plan it beforehand. So, yes, there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of systems in place which can help to bring about the change. But again, sometimes the change is so drastic, or sometimes it is unprecedented. So to box it up as a particular procedure, or as a particular model, it becomes difficult. So yes, of course, there are management tools, but everything may not fit in every situation. I mean, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think Amri, you're absolutely right, and so even I believe that there are lots of tools, but I always like to ask that one question: for the sake of what are we wanting to change? For the sake of what? That defines our purpose, that defines our why, and that also defines what tool would be used for it. So change management tools are plenty, but the first question is for the sake of what? Why are we trying to change, and then get the right tool.
Okay, thank you.
Mukesh, Mr. Mukesh Thapliyal, can you ask your question right now?
Sir, am I audible?
Please go ahead.
Sir, good evening to all. First of all, it's a treat to attend this webinar series of leadership. Thanks to Captain Tyagi, sir. My question is whether it is a quality or skill, and second question is whether it can be improved by spiritual practice.
Now, this is, Mukesh has really, played a bouncer, and he asked the most difficult question here, whether it is a quality or a skill, and he is linking it whether it will be improved by spirituality.
Spirituality.
In
Is it?
fact, just to share with all the participants, there is one gentleman here in the participant, Mr. Murli Saundar. We had discussion about spirituality and spiritual leadership. And in fact, further to this series, we are going to probably have another series based on spirituality itself. So, if first you both the speakers can respond to the question, and after that, I will request Murli if he can also make a little intervention here. Murli.
To go, I think it is a capacity. So I don't believe that it's a skill. It has elements of skill. So to be able to build capacities requires more than just skill acquisition. And basically, it's a capacity of taking everything that comes with us, right? So definitely, I think there is an element of our spirit, whether we are aligned to our own spirit and we have the will to overcome all the obstacles that we are talking about. So I think there is definitely spirituality involved in it, not from the element of any religion, but really being connected with what our spirit is calling us to do and listening to it, because our spirit will never lie. We just need to build that inner capacity to understand our own inner wisdom. That's how the spirit also speaks to us when we are a hollow bone. By being a hollow bone, I mean somebody who is not attached to their ego or to their ways of what they see an outcome to be. So I think it is a capacity, and it's building of capacity by doing things, by putting things into practice, and not sitting, for hours into meditation. However, being resilient leaders, one of the things that I will definitely, it might sound all woo, but one of the things to build a resilient leadership is to be mindful or to have a meditation practice. So that you can literally every day, have a detoxification of yourself. You can let go of what is not yours, which you've kind of accumulated from the culture and everybody around you, and then come to what is really truly yours, because we are the highest potential that we could be in the temple of this body that we are living. That's what my belief is. I hope it answers something in terms of how I think of it. Amri, would you like to add something?
Yeah, Harmeet, you have already beautifully answered this question. So I would just like to reinforce what you already said, that resilience also comes from the way we think about the problems. Every time and every problem should leave us with some learning. So if whenever I'm looking at a problem, if I am able to ask certain questions to myself, that have I overstated the problem, or is there a better way out of it, or what is it going to lead us to? And if we just make a mental note of those problems, and next time something similar happens, we are able to practice that. That is what makes us resilient. So with experience, also people tend to become more resilient. Just that what you pointed out, that you need to be mindful. Only if you are mindful, only then you can absorb the problem. You can absorb, the learnings that the problem brings with them. So
For Harmeet, the question is, when it comes to change management in corporate world, the change strategies majorly involves around economic values, which involve around drastic layoffs, downsizing, and corporate economic success, which has increased in current COVID situation. What strategies should the HR or the senior management should work upon so that this COVID change is a smooth and acceptable transition both for the employee and for the employer? Harmeet.
I think I'll go back to what Himani said. Thanks for that question, sir. I think it needs a lot of introspection. But I would go back to what Himani actually said at the beginning of our webinar, which is in the things in times of adversity, you treat your team as family, and not just a team or an organization. So I think looking at your organization and asking questions such as, would you like your own children to work there? Would you take those decisions if your children were working there? So coming from that heart, and it's going to be inevitable that there will be layoffs. People will have to be laid off, and that's fine, because when we join an organization, there is not a commitment that we will always be hired forever, right? We know there's a contract. So, but how does an organization let go of people also speaks a lot for what the organization stands for. And just like beginnings are important, endings are important as well. So it might be that the organization is being called to lay off people and workforce has to go, but doing it with the heart is very important. Helping them be laid off and then find something better for themselves. It's an opportunity for human beings also to do something that they've always wanted to do, maybe. So helping them in that way will also help.
I'm so glad that the discussion veered around to spirituality. It is an excellent thing to what is life. You're trained to do something, then you begin to learn as you go along. Management itself is a learning which has certain specified curriculum, it has anecdotes, it has case studies, and these discussions that we have build us up to that. So what it does show is, yes, you got to do all that you can. You can foresee and plan the best that you can. But then life has taught me, you got to do your karma. But at the end of the day, please do realize we cannot always be on top of things. There are things beyond us. And that is when, instead of being shattered, I'm just saying you do your very best, learn, go along, arm yourself, build yourself into a very, very good human being, a very good leader by reading about it, by learning, by practicing, etc. is there. But at the end of the day, my dear folks, life is not white and gray. It is a different shade of that, a different situation you'll have to change. But there are moments in life when you just are helpless. It is beyond you. It's not in my hands. Call it anything. But that faith says, learn to accept things that you cannot change. You do your best, but then this is required. Because at the end of the day, we are mortals. We are not gods. And that will always show us in our face. So I'm not belittling, but also you need the strength to accept things which are beyond you and accept it with somebody else's will and retain your peace of mind and carry on living.
Thank you so much, sir. And purposefully I left those 20 minutes for the audiences, because I knew there would be many questions. And thank you so much to all the audiences who took out time. And I would just make a small comment over there that leadership, generally we related with the gender, and just seeing a webinar, a poster wherein two females are going to speak about the leadership and people joining us. I want to really thank all of you that you have given us that opportunity to speak our mind and to speak, and then the kind of comments we are receiving, they are very, very overwhelming. I'm sure Amri and Harmeet must be feeling the same. So it shows that as India, we are on the right path and we are growing towards a brighter future. So that's a very good inkling, sir. And thank you, Captain Tyagi, for giving me this opportunity. Thanks a ton, Harmeet. I think it was a heated session for most of us, especially during these unprecedented times. And a very big thank you to Amri. And this was my second time connecting with you. It was as pleasurable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Himani. And let us, sign off at a very positive note that, like we are talking about change management, we should look forward to a very beautiful change that our in business environment is looking forward to, as to have more women leaders around us, because women are more emotional. Women have the emotional. I'm sorry to to claim this on this platform, that we have a more pronounced emotional quotient. So we are looking forward to that positive change, and we would like the support from everybody to to hail these women. And Himani and Harmeet, we have two very strong examples here. So this is I can see our future in very good hands.
Thank you so much, Amri, and thank you, Captain Tyagi, and all of you. This was my first time that I was there on this platform, and I never felt like I was doing it for the first time. So there's just so much of inclusion right here, and thanks for echoing exactly how I feel, Himani and Amri. Thank you, everyone.
One little announcement before this webinar is closed. हिंदू फिलॉसफी, वैदिक फिलॉसफी बताती है कि परिवर्तन ही शाश्वत है. If anything is constant, that is change. And change management is to be taken as part of life. Somehow people have started resisting the changes, and that is the main reason of conflict. Whether it is in any organization or in society, change causes conflict. So we have to be change resilient, and that must be a style of life and philosophy. With you, I will be sharing the theme of the next webinar, which most probably would be on innovation. Innovation in different walks of life. That also is kind of a philosophy of the life, that with innovation, and I'm not talking about Jugaad, which has been related with innovation in very derogatory form. We have been every day seeing innovation, and which we derogatively refer as Jugaad and don't pay attention. These are very, very profound discoveries and innovations which we do not take note of. So next time we will come to everyone present here, and our audience is much beyond than this. So we'll come with another theme. Until then, wait for the next announcement. Remain patriotic, remain responsible citizen, keep safe, and keep everyone secure. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Great.